It's go time.
Welcome to the Third Down Gamble podcast with your hosts, Don Charbin and Heath Graham.
As the CFL winds its way through this summer months of great football, and I mean, holy cow, great football is an understatement. The BC Lions have made moves, and the biggest one coming out of there is now Corey McDermott, their special teams coordinator, is gone after what happened against the Calgary Stampeders, where, again, Tyreek McAllister has proven why he is a special find, and if you've got him on your team, other teams better be worried.
Looking at the BC Lions season so far, they are 0-3 on the season. I don't know if special teams was their biggest weakness, and we talked a little bit last week about defensive coordinator Mike Benavides being on the hot seat. I believe he still is. They obviously wanted a shakeup, and special teams coordinator was maybe a little bit easier of a position to let go. Corey McDermott suffers the consequences of that return touchdown. Other than that, I wouldn't say that special teams have been horrible this year, but there are a lot of questions on that defense that need answering in a hurry.
Well, does Byram Archambault worry about his job? Because Khalil Pilkington took one back in the final minute against the Alouettes, but we're not hearing anything out of Montreal that that's going to be happening. I kind of think, a little bit probably had to do something to show the team that you mean business. Certainly his salary isn't as great as some of the other coaches. So in terms of the operations cap, you're probably safer there to do it with him. But it's not only what BC gave up in that game, it's the fact that they're not getting down the field at all. And you think back to that opening kickoff and how much confusion there was at that moment. Calgary could have easily swatted that ball out of bounds and kept possession and started right there.
They could have, and that's a great point as well. BC, we talked a bit about the Lions last week with their injury problems at receiver. Nathan Rourke put up some huge yardage. Yes, some of that was late in the fourth quarter with the game somewhat out of hand, but still able to move the ball, some trouble finding the end zone perhaps. There's a lot of question marks right now, and this is a team that I, amongst many, predicted was going to be the first place team in the West and a real Grey Cup contender. I'm certainly not writing them off at 0-3. There's a lot of football left to play this season. There's only one undefeated team left in the league. We'll get to them in a few minutes, but the season's not lost. They felt a change was needed, and perhaps this is the wake-up call that is going to get the Lions into the win column and climbing up the ranks in the West.
I don't know if getting rid of your special teams coordinator is the way to do it. I think there's bigger problems. Number one is that defensive line has got to be better. Now, they certainly in that game against Calgary showed a little bit more. Most teams want a front four to take care of business so that they can either drop linebackers, blitz linebackers, use them as kind of a shock value, and leave everybody else in either zone or one-on-one coverage, depending on how you want to approach it with your linebackers. The Lions can't do that. They've been blitzing more than anybody because there hasn't been enough pressure from up front. And when you lose out in those battles, as they call them, in the trenches, inside the box, then you are in big trouble because now you're pressing the guys behind you to cover longer.
And there was some questions about that defensive secondary for the Lions at the start of the season as well. They're an experienced and veteran group, but perhaps an aging group that was struggling to keep up with the speed at which the offenses are operating right now. With that defensive line not getting the pressure, not forcing opposition quarterbacks to make quick decisions, it allows the receivers to get some different routes and run away from that defensive coverage.
You're right about that, but I didn't find in the football game, maybe you saw it differently, where the defensive secondary, especially the corners, who were both rookies, really blew any coverages. They got burnt a couple times, yes, but I didn't see them completely out of the play. And that's usually a sign of being a rookie, not understanding what the defensive formation was supposed to be, what your responsibility was, where your assignment was. Gary Peters and TJ Lee were both missing from the game, two veteran presences that were not available to the Lions. Getting back to the original point, if you're not getting pressure from up front and you have an all-star in that mix, Mathieu Betts it's not like it has to fall on him, because now you can double team if no one else is really pushing you. Somebody in that mix, whether they find someone or train them up, somebody's got to make some hay. And this goes back to the defensive coordinator. What are you doing and how are you motivating that defense?
I would not be surprised to see Mike Benavides not make it through the rest of this season if things don't turn around. Offenses in general are operating at an extremely high level compared to the defenses so far this season. We're seeing lots of 400-yard passing games. The lowest point total in a game so far this season was Edmonton and Winnipeg with 41 points. The next lowest game is 50 that we've seen so far this season. So that's a lot of points. Now we've had, as we already talked about, some special teams return touchdowns. Pimpleton, McAllister, Janarian Grant ran another one back as well. So we're seeing that aspect come into play. The defenses are kind of on their back foot right now, trying to figure out what the heck is going on.
Well, other than Pimpleton, the other two that scored touchdowns, Janarian Grant against Saskatchewan, and of course, Terry McAllister against BC, that was the margin of victory in each case. That was what they needed to win that football game. You're getting that kind of output, then it adds to your chances of winning because you've got another way to score. So far, the CFL is averaging over 60 points a game. I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card.
No, that's for sure. And like I said, we've seen some 400-yard games. Levi Mitchell throwing for under 300 yards, but 5 touchdowns in a game as well. Some crazy stats and very few interceptions. And that's the other impressive part, is often when you see passing yards that high, it's kind of a gunslinger mentality, almost going back to those late 80s, early 90s eras of quarterbacks where it was 64% completion rate, 19 touchdowns, 15 interceptions was a good season.
You're right about that. Now, the Alouettes lead the league. Granted, they played an extra game, but they lead the league in passing total yards. But the BC Lions overall are leading in yards per game passing. They're barely ahead of Toronto, which is no shock to me because the Argonauts are certainly lighting it up with Chad Kelly. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are third in that mix. Now, way down at the bottom is the Calgary Stampeders. Of all teams with Vernon Adams Jr., they're only averaging 240 yards of passing a game, and yet they've been in every game and only won the final one. We're close with an overtime and close with a last play field goal in the other two.
They are, and that's, as I said, he's been putting up, Vernon Adams Jr. has been putting up touchdowns as well, and he got the return touchdown by a teammate that helped push them to victory this past week. Chad Kelly would be the closest one to that era that I was talking about. He seems to be a feast or famine type quarterback. He's not afraid to push it down the field, which is contributing to those big numbers, but he also is far and away the interceptions leader so far this season.
But Chad Kelly, to be fair to him, he did make a mistake on that first one against the Rough Riders. But I also liked what he had to do later in the game when the Toronto Argonauts seemed to be falling into a lull. And I found that Mike Miller was getting a little bit too ultra conservative, not necessarily his play calling, but in challenging the defense. 3rd and inches, and he went for a field goal. 3rd and inches, and he punted the ball away. That's almost unheard of in the Canadian Football League, where anything less than half a yard and you don't go for it.
The questions for Toronto then is, who is that short yardage person and how confident are you in your offensive line? That speaks volumes to not go for it in those situations when we're seeing so many teams figuring out the analytics and the data says you go for it in these particular situations. Now, Mike Miller is also a first-year head coach in the CFL. Maybe he doesn't want to make those big mistakes that he would feel cost the team the game, but you're also leaving points off the board by not converting on those 3rd and short situations.
You're also not controlling the football. Now, the one in a post-game interview, he said, yes, I could have gone for it, but I think we needed the points more at that moment. So we kicked the field goal. That was from about 20 yards away for the line of scrimmage, so 27-yard field goal. But of course, Saskatchewan then turns around and gets the ball at the 40. I know in the previous second down, they didn't get the first down because they came up short. Maybe he was gun shy as a result of that. Maybe too, his math told him, and this is very much his schooling, because remember, this guy spent a lot of time in the NFL. math told him, get the points now. We got to stay ahead and keep our distance from this team. We don't know what's going to happen next. I can't fault him for it ultimately, but I do wonder if Chad Kelly, though, finally got to him. And in that second half, we saw a completely different Toronto Argonaut team where they were slinging it. And one of the things that, and this is was the original co-host with me of this podcast, we used to argue incessantly about, in the last 30 seconds of a half, and you got the ball on your own side of midfield, what do you do? Well, I said, time on the clock, go for it. What's said, no, just play for the next half. Well, in 24 seconds, Toronto, 2 plays went down the field.
I'm in the same camp as you, I think, on this one. I hate seeing teams take a knee, especially the way you can get plays in the final 3 minutes of a half. It doesn't take a lot. You get 2 explosion plays and you're well within field goal range, and there's probably enough time on the clock to take 1 shot at the end zone. When you're starting at the 40-yard line, now we can talk about the pros and cons and your feelings on that. You've made it very clear that you're not a fan of giving that much field position. It's the way the league is currently set up. Why not take a shot?
Exactly. And Toronto on the first play found Mackay Polk across the middle, and he went down to the Saskatchewan 24. There was 14 seconds left, and the Argonauts, Chad Kelly, could care less about the clock. He wanted the touchdown and found Tyler Coleman about 5 yards out, and he backed into the end zone. And suddenly the Argonauts, who had struggled for a while, were back into the lead as they went into halftime. I think that was a big morale boost. There was some talk about the relationship between Miller and Chad Kelly. I know Chad Kelly's a very intense individual, but I also think, too, with what to do in a Canadian football game, especially coming down to third downs and stuff like that, because he was not happy when they weren't gambling on third and short.
Now, the one thing that you want to avoid in that last minute is throwing one up, almost some of those 50-50 balls that can be intercepted and swing momentum back the other way. But if you're smart about the play calling and the execution, the other team is trying to not give up the big play, but you can eat up some decent chunks of yardage. Stop the clock. You've got time to reset, get another play in. Like I said, field goal range when you're starting at your own 40 is really two decent plays away. And you can really eat up a lot of real estate in a hurry.
You don't even need an explosion play to make it. You can probably 25-yard pass and you're there. Winnipeg showed that against Calgary when they won on opening night. They didn't have to go the whole way. They only needed to get to the Calgary's 50. Then they were close enough for a field goal attempt. That's only 30 yards.
Exactly. You start at the 40. A 15-yarder gets you to midfield. Another 15-yarder gets you to the opposition's 40, and you're well within range.
When you have those chunks of yardage handed to you, I hope, please, 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 in the new CFL in 2027, the 40-yard line is gone. 30-yard line as far as anybody gets to start. It's still 80 yards or 70 yards, I should say, from the opposite goal line. Makes more sense to me. If they're wanting to cut down on field goals, it's about scoring, but have we really needed it this year? Honestly, have we needed that 40-yard line? No. Now, I want to get into a little bit of football 101. And this comes back to that Saskatchewan game against the Toronto Argonauts. In that second quarter, with just the 3-minute warning has just passed, Trevor Harris throws an interception in the Argonauts end zone. And Samuel Emilus happens to be the receiver that is the target of the pass. Toronto's Tavares McFadden actually gets a chance to step in front of the ball, picks it off in the end zone. People in the stands are more so upset at Trevor Harris for throwing what appears to be a duck into the end zone with the defenders just standing there. But if you really break down the play, this is Samuel Emilus's problem. When Emilus makes his move towards the inside of the field, the defender is over top of him, meaning that he's further down the field than you are at this present moment. When you see that situation, you're supposed to cut in front of him. But instead, he decides, I can beat him to the back. I'm just going to go around him. Well, Harris, reading that the defender was further away, threw it to the spot that Emilus was supposed to go. And that's why the interception happened. And when they came off the field, Harris and Emilus had a long chat.
Interesting. And that's one of the things that you pick up in stadium when you're watching. There had been previously a knock on Trevor Harris not being able to push it into the end zone in the red zone. I think the last season And so far this season, he's proven that he can move the ball. He's been quite effective with the Riders in moving the ball down the field and lots of experience. Sam Emilus also is a fantastic receiver. Sometimes signals get crossed. Sometimes you make the wrong move and you get caught out. And this is one of those situations. It looks bad on the quarterback, like you said, because he's kind of throwing it right into the arms of that defensive back waiting for the ball. But he's expecting the receiver to be in a certain spot. And Emilus in this situation wasn't there.
Emilus brings up another point, and that is, should Samuel Emilus be returning punts? He gets injured in the football game, and as a result, we don't know that it's too serious, but he couldn't play the rest of the night. I have a problem with your top receiver going back to return punts. Now, Corey May said, you're on this team, you've got to be prepared to do what it takes. No problem with the attitude. But if Samuel Emilus is raising his hand saying, I'll do it, coach, I'm just going to walk over and pull it down. We've got other people on this team that can return punts.
Exactly. Daniel Weeb, for one, has had experience in college returning punts. He is a rookie, but he did have a touchdown reception and another reception in this game as well. After Emilus went down, who was back there returning kicks? Daniel Weeb was back there returning. I don't like it either, putting your star receiver at risk, especially it takes a lot of guts to be a special teams return guy, and we've got some very talented ones in this league. But when the player that is earmarked for that goes down injured, all a team should be focusing on in the return game is somebody securing the ball and falling forward. A friend of the show, Andrew Hoskins in Edmonton, says that was the Elks special teams play for about a decade, was catch the ball and fall forward. When you don't have a star that can break it, that's all you need to do. Secure the ball. Don't make the big mistakes. Emilus, being the competitor he is going to try to make something out of it. But this is the risk that you put him at.
Exactly. And when you've got that much time and investment in that receiver, and he has been good for that football team, he has helped them win 2 games. He had 3 touchdowns in the last game that he played prior to this. But you lose him and you lose a key weapon on a play that really would it have mattered if it had been 5 yards less if Weeb was returning the kick? James Lester Jr. was out because of a shoulder injury in the first place. This is what necessitated all of this. But again, if I'm asking who can return kicks and Emilus says I can, I'm going to say not you. Who else? Because not that I want to pick on Daniel Weeb, because he did a great job of it. In the greater scheme of things, without knowing what Weeb can do for you, who do you think is more important to the team right now?
Sam Emilus by far, right? Like I said, you've got a rookie receiver that's got some experience in it. Tell him to catch the ball. That's all he needs to do.
Going back to that game, I know where my needle is stuck on that football game, but so many things happen in that game that really are interesting. 2:42 to go in the fourth quarter. Toronto has the ball on their own 27. Chad Kelly throws a little dump pass off to the flat, which is sort of towards the sideline across the back of the line of scrimmage. Samuel Hicks catches the ball, starts to run. Antoine Brooks catches up to him, grabs him, and then grabs the grill. As he does that, Tavon Campbell, who's being blocked, actually happened to be there and knocks the ball free, and the Rough Riders recover. This play goes to automatic review because it's a turnover, and the play is called back because of a face mask penalty. I loved what the booth did. This is getting it right.
100%. And my question is, what were all those fans at Mosaic Stadium booing when this play was overturned? It was a clear face mask. It turned the player carrying the ball, which is why he got hit on the angle he did and the ball came loose. This was 100% the correct call to reverse the play on the field. Toronto 100% should have retained the ball. There was nothing wrong with the replay center taking another look and correcting the on-field mistakes.
Now, even at the time, I'm opposite side of the field where this took place, but I could see it from my seat position that the grill had been grabbed, the face mask had been grabbed. And I turned to my wife and I said, I think the booth has got to question themselves as to whether you can profit from a penalty, because that was a face mask. And should that be ignored in a turnover? Well, according to what the ruling came out, it is not ignored. And I love the fact, because then that doesn't give you carte blanche to get turnovers. You can't do anything you want. I would like to see it extended to when a guy gets concussed, that he drops the ball because he's concussed. You say, you can't gain that from a concussion.
I guess concussed is more of a specific diagnosis, but you're saying basically an illegal hit to the head that results in a turnover.
Very much so. But you can tell that a guy is in pain or is not with it at that moment, because the arms go limp, the ball comes out. Now, it rarely happens. It really does rarely happen. But when it does, I don't think you should be able to benefit from it. The CFL here charted that course a little bit. It would have to be called a penalty at that moment, and maybe it would be targeting, high hit, whatever the case may be, and then it could be applied again.
I don't see a problem with that either. If we want to be serious about player safety, 100%. It's the team that commits the major foul should never benefit from the result of those actions.
Now, the Edmonton Elks, you teased it a little bit. They are alone and are the only team undefeated left in the Canadian Football League. You got to go back about a dozen years to the last time Edmonton charted a strong start to the season. And that was with Michael Riley as their quarterback. Chris Jones as their head coach went through and started off very hot. Now, they went and lost a bunch of games and then won some more and went on to win the Grey Cup that year.
I'm going to go back to the word of the season for me so far, parity. And the Elks, yes, they're 3-0. They haven't really blown anybody out. There haven't really been big blowout wins and losses. There's been some 2-score games, that kind of thing, that have pulled away. But 4 weeks into the season, looking at the standings, we've got 2 teams with 3 wins, 3 teams with 2 wins, a couple teams, Calgary and Winnipeg, with 1 win each, 2 winless teams. That's not a lot of room right now, and you're seeing games close. Winnipeg battled back in that game against Edmonton. They were down 17 points, took a late lead, and then Edmonton marched down the field for the winning score. This is a team with Cody Fajardo at the helm that seems comfortable with who they are. Justin Rankin continues to turn heads with his performance as well. And you have to consider the Elks a contender so far from what they've shown. And no surprise if they're hosting a home playoff game come November.
One of the things, and you just touched on it, about Edmonton coming down and scoring and taking the lead back. And how did they do that? They went and scored a touchdown. Now, maybe Mark Killam saw what happened in Calgary and said, we're not going to kick a field goal and have them come down and kick one. We're going to score a touchdown. And I love the fact that they were so aggressive in that final minute. Most teams would be handing the ball off, trying to run the clock down. But no, Edmonton was going after it. And they got a touchdown pass late, 6 seconds left, I guess, when they scored. That didn't leave Winnipeg time to get into the other end zone. And on that final play, I don't know about you, when Zach Collaros threw that ball to Nick Dembski on the last play of the game, what were they thinking?
Well, funny you should ask that. I did listen to the coaches show with Mike O'Shea and Derek Taylor, airing Monday nights on CJOB. There's a free plug for CJOB and Derek Taylor. There was a play drawn up that did not come to fruition. I believe there was going to be some hook and ladder type play, some laterals that they had drawn up. And they said there are different elements to each play. So they didn't want to just toss it into the end zone on that 50-50 ball. He says that more often than not, they won't call pass interference. Your chances of coming down with it in those situations where everybody thinks you're throwing it to one corner of the end zone, your odds of making it aren't great. Dembski did make something out of the play, got down to about the 10-yard line. But I believe what Coach O'Shea says, watching that play develop, that somebody else should have been there to take a lateral from Dembski, keep that ball moving, and try to get into the end zone.
If you go back to the play, and you can, if you PVR'd it, it's easy to do. If you have to wait for CFL Classics to have it for you, there's 2 receivers with him, but they're both ahead of him. He can't do anything. And there's a about 6 Elks defenders wrapping around him. He had nowhere to go. And the other thing that really bugged me about this, why did they go hurry up? It doesn't matter anymore. Unlike the NFL, where the clock, if it hits 0, the game is over. In the CFL, you have every opportunity to complete that play. The only thing you worry about is the 20-second clock. They could have huddled up, got the call from the bench, and done something. Instead, Zach Collaros whipped them to the line with seconds to go and said, we got to do this now.
Coach O'Shea spoke to that as well. This is a great question. And if anybody's interested, here's another plug for CJOB. They put it up as a podcast. Their coach's show is available on Apple Podcasts. They were trying to catch the defense off guard. They were trying to not allow the defense a chance to get set. And that's why they rushed the play with time left on the clock.
The result didn't prove anything. So if that was what was going on, but if I read the lips of Mike O'Shea at the end of the game, Dembski goes down and goes, what were we doing out there? And I don't think, yes, he'll protect his team. I have no problem with that. But at this moment in time, when it was genuine emotion, he didn't even like what was going on, because I don't think he was prepared for what they were doing, because I don't think Tommy Condell had really sussed this out.
Again, you're watching it from your living room, not on the sidelines. Is he saying what were we doing based on the play call or on the execution?
Could be either, could be both. That's entirely fair. He may have been upset at Dembski at the moment. He may have been upset at the offensive call at the moment. You don't know that. And even standing beside him, I don't think you'd even know that.
I think more importantly for the Blue Bombers, their bigger concern is the 2019, 21, 22 Bombers prided themselves on not allowing people to score in the fourth quarter. That has gone away this year, including the preseason game against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Bombers have now allowed fourth quarter drives to put the game away for the other team. And in some cases, long fourth quarter drives. They were lucky to get the win against Calgary, getting the ball back to get that winning touchdown as well. So that's more of a concern for me than the offensive play calling at this point. They need to figure out how to get that attitude of the Winnipeg defense back.
But I don't know if it's an attitude thing or a talent thing. Adam Bighill and Jackson Jeffcoat are no longer there. And Jackson Jeffcoat, I think, is probably one of the most underrated defensive linemen that the CFL has ever seen. He moved mountains while across the way, Willie Jefferson got all the stats. And the day that they let him go, I thought was a massive mistake. Adam Bighill being let go. You're going to take a hit, and the Bombers have. Reddick Cramdy has been moved from linebacker, halfback, now back to safety. That's not a natural progression for him. He's a bigger body. He wants to be up front. They blitz him a lot. They bring him to the line a lot. He's not Adam Bighill doing that. Reddick Cramdy's still a little inexperienced.
He is. My argument on Adam Bighill, though, was given the severity of his injuries, I can completely understand the Bombers saying goodbye. He did sign a free agent deal with the Calgary Stampeders, but even at that, he missed a big chunk of the 2025 season before he was field ready.
There's another aspect to any player's life in the game, and that is, what are you in practice and what are you in the locker room? And guys like that are massive to team morale.
Some breaking news from Dave Naylor with TSN. Wide receiver Ajou Ajou has agreed to terms with the Calgary Stampeders. Your thoughts on this breaking news?
Well, it's breaking relative to us because we're recording just as this comes out. Of course, by the time this podcast drops, and maybe when you're finally listening to it, it's going to be old news. The speed at which this happened surprises me. I was under the impression that it was minimum 6, maybe maximum 9 games before he would be allowed near an opportunity to get back on the football field. So obviously he's done his penance on some level, that the CFL is now satisfied that they can take another chance on him, because ultimately that's what it comes back to. It's the CFL that's going to sanction whether or not he can play.
Now, 3 Down Nation did announce earlier today that he has been reinstated by the league. The wording of it is a little bit of a gray area right now. It says on Tuesday, he is free to sign with any team, though he must serve a 6-game suspension. Now, what is not clear at this point as we're reading through this is whether the games already this season count in that 6, or if it's 6 more games as of today, which means he would essentially miss the entire first half of the season.
That's a great point. I would think, and maybe you'll disagree, but I would think that it's going to be you sign and you're off for 6 right away. And as such, the Stampeders are probably willing to take that chance, wait until I would think this puts him deep into August before he's available.
That would make the most sense to me as well. Like I said, there's just a little bit of ambiguity in the wording of this, but I believe he would now start his 6-game suspension now that he's agreed to terms with a team, meaning that he's not available until game number 10 of the Stampeders season. I'm a little bit surprised to see this announcement this early, given the type of actions that led to the release by the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I'm not sure what message this is sending to fans out there. I don't want to see people lose their careers necessarily either. And we've come through it with the Mario Houston, with Chad Kelly, with many other players over the course of the history of the CFL. I'm just a little bit surprised to see it happen this quickly.
I am too. And I wonder if there's some sort of riders that are being attached to this. In other words, does he have to go to seek counseling every week? Does he have to report to somebody? Seeing to it that he follows through on all of the requirements that were asked of him during this time. It's up to the Stampeders to take this on. I'm not going to begrudge them for signing him because he is a talent and he is something that could really help their football team. But what I do wonder is if you're Jeremy O'Day and you look at this, what are you thinking right now? Because you took a very strong stand. I totally support what he did. I don't know if Jeremy O'Day, maybe he did countenance this. Maybe he thought he'd be back by Labor Day. But I think the Stampeders in this have kind of pushed this agenda forward.
Much like Chad Kelly's reinstatement, Ajou's reinstatement was contingent on the completion of 15 mandatory counseling sessions conducted by a gender-based violence expert. I think that was very similar to what Kelly went through, a psychological assessment by another independent expert, and a meeting with CFL Commissioner Stu Johnson. He has gone through those steps now and is looking to rebuild his career.
If he's going to do anything with his career going forward, he has to become a model citizen. Now, Chad Kelly, for the most part, has stayed within the lines. He hasn't done too much. Sometimes his Twitter posts make you question what he's thinking on that day, where with Ajou Ajou, a little bit younger, a little bit more exuberant, does he have that moxie to say, no, this is not what I want to be. This is how I want to be, is what I am on that football field. A quality person, a good person to my teammates. I don't believe in cancel culture. I think everybody that makes a mistake gets an opportunity to make amends. And if you do, and do it well, then you have a chance to get on with your life.
We'll continue to monitor this and see how the season progresses once Ajou Ajou is allowed back on the field.
Well, you got to think that our reaction is probably just a microcosm of how strong some may be in the universe that we live, because social media can be a very vocal outlet for a lot of opinion. For Ajou Ajou, he better be prepared. He's going to get some vitriol coming back at him over what happened. He better be prepared to rise above and say, look, I made a mistake. I paid my price. I'm going to be a better person.
I'm Derek Taylor, the voice of the Bombers on 680 CJOB, and I listen to the Third Down Gamble podcast.
Now, let's touch back on something that's been happening in this league, and I don't quite understand why. Road teams are 9-5 after the first few weekends of the season. In what universe does that make sense? How is it that road teams are going in and taking away the home crowd and beating these teams? Saskatchewan losing to Toronto. Some people were surprised. I wasn't. But Calgary going into BC and basically taking care of business, that did surprise me. And Kelowna, where they were just rabid Lions fans.
It has been interesting, and we'll see where we fall with our picks for week 5 as well. I'm anticipating at least a couple more road wins. Stay tuned for those picks. The other surprise, and I talked about it with our picks last week, was the Bombers losing 2 in a row at home. That doesn't happen often with this iteration of the Blue Bombers. They've only lost, I think, 10 home games in about the last 5 or 6 seasons. So it's a rarity to have one loss, let alone 2 in a row.
If you can't protect home turf, then you have to do it on the road. And typically the attitude that most coaches carry, especially in the Canadian Football League, but I think in the NFL too, you win the majority of your home games. So win 7 of 8, 7 of 9, whatever the number is. And then you go 500 on the road. You're going to have a great season. This year, it's just the opposite. And the East so far is winning the battle against the West. They're 3-2 overall, which not a huge surprise. But again, doing it on the road. Hamilton goes to Winnipeg and beats them. Toronto goes to Saskatchewan and beats them.
And most importantly, I think in all of this is the Edmonton Elks have a home win early in the season. That was huge for them. They're on the road again this week, so they'll have only played one home game in the first 5 weeks of the season. But the fact that it was a win and they've now strung together a couple of road wins on top of that, that is great momentum. And I hope that begins to show with fans in the stands at Commonwealth.
Oh, you got to believe that people are going to be coming back. I mean, heavens, they're in first place. Like, what more could you ask? And they're undefeated. I mean, seriously, BC 0-3, Edmonton 3-0. I don't think anybody would have sat around in their prognostication rooms and said, yeah, that's going to happen.
Not only that, they have the most exciting player in the CFL in Justin Rankin. I think he's a MOP candidate, by far the leading candidate through 4 weeks of the season. I know there's a lot of games left. Every time he touches the ball, you expect magic to happen. And he busted a few long runs against Winnipeg again this past week. They did a good job of shutting him down in the third quarter and most of the fourth quarter. But that first half, it looked like he was well on his way to another 200-plus yard game.
It was one of the questions that was asked was, how was it that you could let this guy go off in the first half and find a way to stop him in the second half? And some will argue that it was just pursuit of the football. It may be, too, that the Edmonton play calling changed as well, because a lot of the times on first down, I noticed, is that they tried to run Rankin right through the middle. Went for 106 yards, as it turned out anyway. Brady Oliveira only had 77. And I mused with you about a Tommy Condell offense. How many yards rushing is Brady Oliveira going to get? Now, at the pace he's going, he's still going to get a 1,000-yard season. But I'm thinking he's looking across, seeing number 5 on Edmonton, and he's going, I want those numbers.
Funny you should mention that. I've been kind of tracking 3 key players on the race to 2,000 yards from scrimmage: Rankin, Oliveira, and James Butler from the BC Lions. Butler is falling behind rapidly. Right now, through their first 3 games each, if they continued on the pace they're on, Justin Rankin is looking at 3,246 yards total receiving and rushing, with the bulk of that being the rushing yards. Brady Oliveira would be on pace for just over 2,000 yards total offense, 2052. He's right now got 222 yards rushing, so just over 70 yards a game, and 120 receiving. James Butler is on pace for 1,000 yards total from scrimmage, 117 yards rushing and 51 receiving so far. He was somebody I expected to be a lot bigger part of that BC Lions offense than we've seen so far. Oliveira, I know exactly what you're saying with Condell and his preponderance to throw the ball as opposed to run. Anytime a back's pushing 2,000 yards from scrimmage, whether it's rushing or receiving, I think that's a pretty solid season.
Do we have to show any love for Jake Mayer, who probably was an absolute dud in the first half until late in the second quarter, but then came out on fire in the second half and put up 336 yards passing with 3 touchdowns against the Montreal Alouettes? It kind of surprised me how Mayer seems to have found that fountain of youth, where, remember when he first came in with the Calgary Stampeders, he had 3 games in a row where he threw for over 300 yards. He looked like, wow, this guy's going to be something special. And then he seemed to stutter after that. This is the Jake Mayer that I think a lot of people were wondering was still there. It seems like Ryan Dinwiddie has pulled him out of somewhere.
Possibly getting Drew Brown out of the room puts Jake Mayer at ease a little bit. He's got a couple of weeks before McLeod Bethel Thompson's fully up to speed to step in and help out on that offense. one game's a pretty small sample size. Anybody could.
But it's against the Alouettes, though. That's supposed to be one of the top defenses in the league.
Nobody's a top defense in the league this year. Everybody's given up 35, 40 points a game. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. The yards are available to you, and Jake Maier took them in this game. I want to see it sustained through 3 or 4 starts before I'm sold on Jake Maier being a number one guy.
It's got to give you some confidence. And when you hear Ryan Dinwiddie talk about the departure of Drew Brown, basically, and this is what we speculated, and it's pretty much played out. I said that if Drew Brown finds out that he's not going to be the starter, he's probably going to walk in and demand a trade. Well, he wanted to be cut, but then the Red Blacks weren't going to do that. They wanted value for him, so they were going to make a trade, and they got back some draft picks and made a pretty good, decent deal, and as did Winnipeg come out of the deal pretty well. Drew Brown could see the writing on the wall, and he wasn't going to sit around and wait. Now, interestingly, he's going to have to sit around and wait in Winnipeg.
He is, but he's gone back to an organization that he's comfortable in as well. Yes.
True, but he's not playing.
He's not playing. He wants to be a starter, 100% why he left Winnipeg in the first place in free agency. Ryan Dinwiddie took that away from him before the season even started. Where else is he going to go at this point? He's going to go back to somewhere where he's comfortable. He's happy to be back in Winnipeg. The Bombers are happy to have him back in that locker room. It remains to be seen how much value he brings on the field this year if he's given those opportunities. I feel it's the best situation for Drew given what has been happening in Ottawa. If they weren't going to play him, this is the place to be.
If Winnipeg continues to stumble, do you ever think of pulling Collaros out in favor of Brown? I mean, this is wild speculation on my part.
I don't know. Have you seen anything from Zach Collaros that's concerning this season? He's middle of the pack as far as quarterbacks go. 944 yards, 5 touchdowns so far this season, 2 interceptions. He's got some comfort there with Nick Dembski on a continued basis. Tim White's fit in well. I'd have to see a big drop off from Zach Collaros before I'd even consider benching him. From what we've seen so far this season, he's looked better than he did in 2025.
But if you're not winning with him, and Mike O'Shea is probably the last coach to ever do this anyway, do you ever start thinking, well, maybe we just got to shake this up to get everybody's attention?
I don't think the quarterback is where you look to in this. He's completed 70% of his passes. He's averaging over 300 yards a game. That's a pretty tough situation to bench a guy. Now, we've seen teams do it. Bo Levi Mitchell got benched in Hamilton and in Calgary for Jake Maier and Taylor Powell in those different situations. It lit a fire under Bo when he came back. I guess if you're thinking that route, you sit Collaros for a game and hope it sparks something in him that he gets even better. But those numbers are not concerning to me with him as your quarterback.
I'm with you on that. I don't think there's anything that Zach has shown that says to me that he doesn't belong there. But there's going to be people in Winnipeg. They're going to be upset that this team is 1-2, and they're going to start pointing at the quarterback because Winnipeg is not up there in points scored.
The most popular guy is always the backup quarterback, right?
You better believe that, especially in this league.
Now, interesting side note, Drew Brown had his first practice with the Bombers this week today, came out wearing the number 4 jersey, and those are some biggie shoes to fill.
Oh, you're not kidding. I'm surprised he took that number of all the numbers that were available, but if he believes that he can be anything near to what Adam Bighill provided for that team. Circling back, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, you're right. He's now just getting to Ottawa. It's interesting the way Dinwiddie put it. I thought for sure that they were moving from Drew Brown, and Dinwiddie started looking around to see who could help him. Instead, he knew that he was going to be losing Drew Brown, and he wanted a backup before he got rid of Drew Brown. Smart thinking on his part. But McLeod Bethel-Thompson, a guy who hasn't really played much, his big game last year was when Karfala Exame was playing corner for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and when him and Tyson Philpott just lit him up, and it was Philpott's biggest day ever. Can McLeod Bethel-Thompson be that? And what does he do to the room? Because we know he's a very enigmatic person. Is he going to settle behind Jake Maier as Jake Maier works his way through what's going on?
Well, right now, other than Jake Maier, Bryson Barnes is the only QB on the roster. So they need somebody of McLeod Bethel-Thompson's ilk and experience to get in there. There are questions about Thompson's leadership and that's type of thing as well. And is he somebody that's going to come in and provide a spark? I don't know if that's necessarily what they're looking for, but certainly the experience that McLeod Bethel Thompson has to be comforting to have him available as your number 2 guy.
Well, and also the time spent with Ryan Dinwiddie. I mean, they've got a long-standing coach quarterback relationship, and McLeod Bethel Thompson's seen it all. It's just, are the mechanics there? Is the arm strength there? Is he going to give them the leadership that they need? In the interim, the Ottawa Redblacks still are bottom feeders, and they've got to figure out a way to get out of this no win, how many losses streak that they're in. If they don't soon, the East is going to disappear, and what do you do?
Red Blacks can't continue to watch everybody else climb past them in the standings. Much like the BC Lions in the West, games matter early in the season, and you don't want to have that 0 in front of you in the win column for too terribly long, or a season can really start to spiral.
Just a reminder to our listeners, Steve Daniel, the person in charge of analytics for the Canadian Football League, is going to be on our next podcast episode.
Third down.
Kicking off week 5 of the CFL season, Chad Kelly and the Toronto Argonauts head to Calgary to take on the Stampeders. Vernon Adams and the Stamps are a 1.5-point favorite at home.
This time, although I called Toronto to score 40 against Saskatchewan, which they did, and that's probably the last time I'll get anything like that right. The Argonauts, they're going to start to get a little road weary, and I think this is where it catches up to them. They played in Saskatchewan. They have to travel to Calgary. It's short. It's a 2-hour flight to get there, so it's not a big deal. They are going from hotel to hotel, practicing on different fields. It's going to start adding up. The Calgary Stampeders, and what did I say about Florent Ormalade? When he steps back on the field, watch out. Well, that's exactly what happened. It was watch out time because Calgary's defensive line ate up that BC offensive line. We didn't even talk about them in the preamble there, but BC's offensive line has got to be fixed as well. That's a major problem when your starting quarterback who's making $750,000 is running for his life on every play.
They're really feeling the loss of Jarrell Broxton that they let go in free agency on that BC Lions offensive line.
I'm not convinced that was the answer either, because BC struggled defending their quarterback last year as well. In fact, it's been a problem for them for about 4 to 5 years. They need something to figure, someone or something to come along and figure this out. They are struggling mightily. The Stampeders at home, this is the rodeo game, I guess if you want to call it. It's the Stampede Bowl. The greatest outdoor show on earth is over. Well, let's say it's at McMahon Stadium for what it's worth, because the way Toronto and Calgary are playing right now, the rodeo might take second place to them.
I see this one being another high-scoring affair. Interestingly, this is the 4th game in a row where the Toronto Argonauts are the underdog, according to odds makers. They've proven them wrong in 2 of 3 so far, and I think they've got one more in them. I like what I've seen from Chad Kelly so far. I think they go into Calgary and pull off the upset.
At 1.5, Toronto could get inside of that pretty easy, but the Argos traditionally suffer in Calgary. I don't know why. I've seen them live there with Ricky Ray as their quarterback, and they just got torched. Defense for Toronto is a little bit more suspect, but their defensive line showed a lot against the Saskatchewan Roughriders. That was a top-flight offensive line, and Toronto beat up Trevor Harris in that football game. I think it's going to be a close game. I kind of like what you're saying. Will Toronto win the game? Maybe, but can they? This is a pick 'em. I mean, again, 1.5 is just bupkis in terms of what the odds are, because the money, according to Vegas, is on both sides, so they don't care. Toronto or Calgary, toss up. I'll lean towards Calgary. You can pick Toronto.
Game 2, the Saskatchewan Roughriders take on the winless Ottawa Redblacks in Ottawa. The home team is a 5.5-point underdog to the red-hot Saskatchewan Roughriders. I'm kind of leaning towards Saskatchewan in this one to cover. It took a Khalil Pimpleton touchdown late to beat the spread against the Montreal Alouettes last week. I'm not sure they got another one in them.
I agree with you, but you're looking at a lot of ex-Saskatchewan Roughriders playing for the Ottawa Redblacks, especially on defense. Quarterback Jake Mayer was in Regina last year. Did what we see in the second half against Montreal matter? That's what I want to know. And is it going to be pouring rain in Ottawa like it always is? If it is, then that slows Saskatchewan down. And right now, Samuel Amelis, Keon Schaefer-Baker may not be in the lineup. That's two big wheels that they're going to be missing out at receiver. How does that play out? Roland Milligan isn't playing. I kind of like Ottawa to get inside the spread. I don't know if they'll win, but I think this could come down to a last play field goal.
Jake Mayer's chemistry with Justin Hardy looked good last week. Eugene Lewis is also questionable for this game. That's a key part of.
But Khalil White was fantastic.
Khalil White had a great game. Had him in fantasy, so I was happy to see it. It's finding that comfort level, and maybe we are starting to see Jake Mayer settle in with some of his receivers a little bit more. I still like what I've seen from Saskatchewan so far this season. I do think that they win this one going away. The two teams on the opposite ends of the standings in the West, the Edmonton Elks head to BC. Second week in a row that the Lions host a game in Kelowna. Apple Stadium was rocking with about 20,000 fans in it last week. Can Nathan Rourke and the BC Lions overcome a 1.5 point underdog tag and give Edmonton their first loss of the season?
Well, for Edmonton, again, it's travel. They were in Winnipeg last week. They get home for a couple of days and they turn around and go to Kelowna. Now, luckily, Kelowna is a very short flight, as it was for Calgary last week. It's a couple hours and you're into the city. Great atmosphere. Boy, they did a wonderful job with that entire event. And the fact that the Lions have stayed there, I think, is going to help them. I think Edmonton is just that good right now. Now have the BC Lions, who they haven't beat and been basically stomped for the last 3 years, staring them in the face. I think there's some revenge motivation here. BC's offensive line is going to be a question. I like Edmonton on this one.
I do too. Right now, I'm buying what Cody Fajardo is selling. He's got that team confident, and this is where that second year with head coach Mark Killam comes into play a bit as well. He's very vocal and emotional on the sideline. I think he instills a lot of confidence in that team. They are dangerous right now. BC's still struggling to find something. Keon Hatcher played last week. He was questionable. He's questionable again this week. They need him, but they can't risk him at this point in the season either. The Lions need to figure out what they're doing quickly, but I think the Elks, for one more week, are flying high in the West. The final game of the weekend, Sunday evening in Hamilton. The Blue Bombers head to town to take on the Ticats. Hamilton already beat Winnipeg in Winnipeg. They are a 3.5 point favorite at home for round 2.
I like the Tiger Cats at home. If this team is for real, which they certainly seem to be, they are putting points up at will. And the way they took care of Winnipeg in Winnipeg, I just think that the Ticats are they are in the top third of this league, where Winnipeg is Midland at best. I kind of think that the Blue Bombers are in tough. They're going to have to score a lot of points in Hamilton. They're going to have to do it. That means they're going to have to put up more, as much as 30 to try to stay in this football game. I like the Tiger Cats. If nobody is injured, nobody's being carted off the field in the receiving core, and Bo Levi Mitchell is healthy, I don't see the way the Winnipeg Blue Bombers win.
I'm with you on this one. I do love these matchups of the veteran quarterbacks. Zach Collaros versus Bo Levi Mitchell. I expect a high-scoring affair in this one as well. What we've seen from that receiving core, especially with the Hamilton Tiger Cats and their connection with Bo Levi Mitchell, has been awesome to watch. They are putting points on the board. We've talked about Winnipeg's struggles on defense. Hamilton ran the ball really well against them in Winnipeg as well. If you get that kind of balanced attack, I don't think Collaros and that Bombers offense can hang with them. I'm taking the Ticats minus 3.5.
Third Down Gamble uses the expert resources of the Canadian Football League and 3 Down Nation. For up-to-date, insightful statistics and analysis, please visit cfl.ca and 3downnation.com. The CFL on CBC theme music is used with written permission from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you for listening to our show. Third Down Gamble is hosted on Podbean. Follow us on Twitter, where our handle is @ThirdDownGamble. Join us again next time. The Third Down Gamble Podcast. Audio worth watching.